Some truths are meant to stay hidden. Some doors are meant to remain closed. I learned that the hard way. That night started like any other. The house was quiet, the lights dimmed, and my husband, Eric, was still at work. Or at least, that's what I had assumed. I had stopped checking the time when his late nights became routine, when the excuses became predictable, when the distance between us turned into something I could no longer ignore. I had planned to go to bed early, but some restless, uneasy feeling kept me awake. It wasn't anything obvious, just a slow, creeping sensation in the back of my mind that I couldn't shake. Like the air had shifted, like something was just off. I walked down the hallway, past the empty kitchen, my feet making no sound against the hardwood floor. As I reached the bedroom, my fingers lingered on the door handle for just a second before pushing it open. And that's when I saw it. At first, it didn't make sense. My husband's briefcase sat on the chair near the closet, his jacket draped over the back of it. His shoes, the ones he always changed into after work, were lined up neatly by the door. His watch, his favorite watch, the one he never left the house without, was sitting on the nightstand. But Eric wasn't home. A cold chill crept up my spine as I stepped further into the room. The air felt different, charged with something I couldn't explain. And then I noticed something else. The closet door was slightly ajar, just enough to see that something was inside. I felt my pulse quicken. I hadn't opened that closet today. Slowly, cautiously, I moved toward it, my breath shallow, my heart hammering in my chest. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the wood as I pulled it open just enough to see inside. And that was the moment everything changed. Inside, neatly hidden behind rows of clothes, was a locked safe. A safe I had never seen before. I took a step back, my mind racing. How long had it been there? And more importantly, what was inside? My throat tightened as I knelt down, running my fingers along the cool metal surface. There was no dust, no signs of it being hidden away for years. It was new, deliberate. I glanced toward the bedroom door, half expecting Eric to walk in at any second. But the house remained silent. Empty. I turned back to the safe. My fingers hovered over the lock. This was a boundary I knew I shouldn't cross, a line that once crossed, I could never step back from. But I had to know. I took a deep breath and reached for the keypad, my fingers trembling as I pressed in the only combination I knew Eric used, the one for his phone, his computer, everything. My birthday. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft click, the lock released. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I pulled the safe open, my pulse roaring in my ears. Inside, there were stacks of neatly bound cash, more than I had ever seen in my life. But that wasn't what made my stomach drop. Next to the cash, there were documents, fake passports, IDs, all with different names, but Eric's face staring back at me. And beneath them, at the very bottom of the safe, was a small black box. With trembling fingers, I lifted the lid. Inside was a phone I had never seen before. And just as I reached for it, the screen lit up. One new message. I stared at it, my hands frozen, my mind screaming at me to stop, to put it back, to pretend I never saw any of this. But it was too late. I was already in too deep. I reached down and tapped the screen. The message was short. Simple. It's done. Do you want me to take care of her next? A shiver ran down my spine. My hands went cold. My vision blurred. I staggered backward, my breath coming in short gasps, my entire world tilting beneath me. Who were they talking about? Who was her? And worse, why was Eric involved in any of this? I barely had time to process the thought before I heard it. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Eric was home. And I was standing there, the safe wide open, the message burning into my mind. I had seconds to decide what to do. And no matter what choice I made, I knew nothing would ever be the same again. The second I heard the tires crunch against the driveway, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I slammed the safe shut, my fingers trembling as I fumbled with the lock, twisting it back into place just as the front door creaked open. My pulse pounded in my ears, drowning out the sound of my own shaky breath. Eric was home. I forced myself to move, to act normal, even though my legs felt unsteady beneath me. I grabbed a book from the nightstand and threw myself onto the bed just as his footsteps echoed down the hall. The door opened, and there he was. His expression was unreadable, his eyes scanning the room for something. Did he notice? Did he know? My fingers curled around the book in my lap, my knuckles white. "Hey," he said, his voice casual. Too casual. "You're still up?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Couldn't sleep. He studied me for a second longer before stepping inside, loosening his tie. "Long night?" he asked, kicking off his shoes. "You have no idea." I forced a smile. "Yeah, you. Same old." He let out a sigh, rubbing the back of his neck. "I think I might take a shower. You don't mind, do you?" I shook my head, watching as he disappeared into the bathroom, the sound of running water filling the silence. The second I heard the shower turn on, I moved. I needed to see that message again. My hands trembled as I reopened the safe, heart pounding as I reached for the phone. The screen was dark now, but my fingers slid over the smooth glass, pressing the power button. The message was still there, glaring at me. "It's done. Do you want me to take care of her next?" My stomach twisted. Who was her? I scrolled through the previous messages, my breath catching as I saw the exchange leading up to that final text. Unknown. "The transfer is complete. She won't be a problem anymore, Eric." Good. Make sure there's no loose ends. My vision blurred. What had he done? Who was he talking about? I had spent years thinking I knew my husband, trusting him, loving him. But the man who had sent these messages wasn't the man I had married. He was someone else. Someone capable of things I couldn't even comprehend. And now I knew too much. The realization hit like a slap. My entire body went cold. My fingers hovered over the phone, my mind screaming at me to put it back, to walk away, to pretend I had never seen it. But I couldn't. Not now. Suddenly, the shower shut off. I barely had time to shove the phone back into the safe and close the door before I heard his footsteps approaching. I threw myself back onto the bed, gripping the book as if it could somehow steady me. The door opened, and Eric stepped out, a towel wrapped around his waist, water droplets clinging to his skin. He looked at me for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Something in my expression must have changed because his brows furrowed slightly. "You okay?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired." He nodded slowly, as if considering whether or not to believe me. Then, finally, he turned away, grabbing a pair of pants from the dresser. "You should get some rest. You look exhausted." I swallowed. "Yeah, I think I will." But I didn't sleep. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing, trying to piece together what I had just uncovered. There was only one thing I knew for certain. I wasn't safe. The next morning, I made a decision. I needed to get out. But I had to be smart about it. If Eric had done what I thought he had done, if he was capable of the things I had read, then I couldn't risk letting him know that I knew. I moved carefully, pretending everything was normal. I kissed him goodbye like I always did. I smiled at the right moments, laughed at his jokes, acted as if nothing had changed. But inside, I was counting down the hours until I could get away. I waited until he left for work. Then, I packed a small bag. Just the essentials. Cash, my passport, anything I could fit without raising suspicion. And then I took the phone from the safe. I needed proof. I had to know exactly what I was dealing with. With shaking fingers, I scrolled through the contacts. There were names I didn't recognize, numbers with no saved IDs. But one caught my attention. Unknown number. I hesitated. Then, I pressed dial. The phone rang once. Twice. Then someone picked up. A voice, deep and unfamiliar, spoke on the other end. "Is it done?" A chill ran down my spine. I took a breath, steadying my voice. "Who is this?" There was a pause. Then, a slow chuckle. "That's funny. I was just about to ask you the same thing." The line went dead. I sat there, frozen, my heart slamming against my ribs. They knew. Whoever they were, they knew. I had to go. Now. I grabbed my bag and ran. The airport was crowded, but I didn't stop moving. I kept my head down, my hood up, my fingers curled tightly around my passport. I bought a ticket for the next flight out, didn't matter where, as long as it was far. As long as it got me away from him. I was almost at the gate when my phone buzzed. A new message. I shouldn't have looked. I should have turned it off, should have thrown it away. But I did. And when I saw the words on the screen, my entire body went cold. You really thought you could leave? My breath hitched. My hands shook. Then, before I could react, another message appeared. Turn around. Slowly, I lifted my head. And there, standing just a few feet away in the crowd, was Eric. Watching me. Smiling,